Hello, hello, hello. We want to get started on time, so if you wouldn't mind starting to work your way towards your seats, and if U.S. Conference of Mayors staff will gather other mayors so we can get started on time. We have a very exciting day. Mayor Kaus, Mayor Kaus, Mayor Kaus. You got your button on? You got your City 3.0? Hey, Maria. Yeah. Ed. All right, we're going to get started in 2 minutes, so if you can please work your way to your seat. U.S. Conference of Mayors staff, if you can gather some mayors who are outside socializing and doing important work.
Guitar and play. Adios and via con Dios. Going home now to stay.
Now, I only have one shirt. What's
The señoritas don't care when there's no dinero. I got the money to stay. Adios and via con Dios. Going home now to stay.
The first corner. I'm gonna give it to you publicly.
Yeah, please do. And then we got to play.
By the lake. Put my ass in a lawn chair, toes in the clay. Not a worry in a world of PBR on the way. Life is good today. Life is good today.
Thanks, Tom. Hey, Josh, can you get a copy of the New York Times? Is that like a home run?
Gonna put the world away for a minute, pretend I don't live in it. Sunshine gonna wash my blues away. Had sweet love, but I lost it. She got too close, so I fought it. Now I'm lost in the world, trying to find me a better way. Wishing I was deep, deep in the water somewhere. Got the blue sky breeze, and it don't seem fair. Only worry in the world is the tide gonna reach my chair.
Okay, everybody, we're going to get started. I want to say good morning. I'm Sacramento Mayor Kevin Johnson and have the honor and pleasure. I'm getting a round of applause for just being me. Life doesn't get any better than that. Thank you so much. And we want to start the session honoring a dear friend. We have one of our mayors will be departing. He's an advisory board member from Loretto, Mayor Raul Salinas. Come on up, Mayor. Our mayor serves as a co-chair of our immigration task force and has been a leader among mayors on this critical topic. In addition, he's contributed his expertise on border issues, vice chair of our surface ports and our transportation and communications committee. Before he became mayor of Loretto 12 years ago, Raul began his career in public service as a congressional aide and later worked as a Capitol Hill police officer. He then served, listen to this, 27 years as an FBI agent, where his last assignment was involved in the U.S. Embassy in Mexico City. As mayor, he kept Loretto safe, working through the economic downturn. The city got through the recession with no furloughs and enjoys one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. Let's give a round of applause, like only we can do, for our mayor, Mayor Salinas. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Look at that. A standing ovation from your peers.
Fellow mayors, I am at a loss for words, which is not often for me, a former radio announcer. I am really honored, and when I ran for office, nobody thought I could win. I had no money, I had no looks, and no political experience, except working for a Congressman Kika de la Garza from South Texas. I am really humbled to be here today and to tell you that there's no better job than being a mayor of a city. Wow. And to be part of this great organization. I can tell you, as I see the young kids coming through Laredo and to the Rio Grande Valley from Central America, and I visited with some of them from Honduras before I came, and I know that those mothers that are bringing their kids want a better future for their children. And all I ever try to do, and I am a little emotional because I come from very humble beginnings, selling newspapers barefooted. And this is really the truth. Newspapers at 10 years old to help support my family. I can tell you that I've done my best. I've been so fortunate in life working on Capitol Hill, and I have so many secrets. I can't tell you, otherwise I have to shoot all of you, but and I worked for a congressman and then became a Capitol policeman, and wow, did I see some things at night. Wow, can't tell you. And then I became an FBI agent. Nobody ever thought we could become an FBI agent, and that was the greatest experience in my life. And then to become mayor of a great city and to have done the few things that we've done, with City Council. But to meet President Johnson at the White House, the other President Johnson, this one, and we hit it off right away, man. And then I've got to tell you this little story about President Johnson. I used to put stickers on cars and on telephone posts, put those signs and everything else. And I had a chance to meet him because I worked for a Texas congressman. And the congressman says, Cowboy, that was my radio name. Cowboy Roy was my radio name. So, Cowboy, we're going to go to the White House. And I thought he meant the White Castle. So we go to the White House, and there I go, and he takes me up. What the heck am I doing here? I'm wearing a seersucker suit. Remember those blazers? Those were cool. So I'm walking up with the congressman, and he said, "You go with me." And he introduces me to Lady Bird, and then we go up to the Blue Room. And there's a major there, and the major, of course, introduces you to the president. And he says, "Mr. President, Congressman Kika de la Garza." So, and I'm behind him. And then the major says, "Mr. President, Raul Salinas." And who the heck is that? I was just a young boy, a young lad. And I told the president, I was so excited because he's one of our own. And I said, "Mr. President, I am Raul Salinas from Alice, Texas, Box 13. Box 13 is where President Johnson somehow found 87 votes and became a United States Senator." So what he says to me, he says, and I'm going to be short, he says, "That's my boy." He gave me a big hug, and anyway, but on a serious note, I just want to, Tom and SRB, thank you. You've been a real pal and a real friend. Love you. I really love you all because you have been so welcoming, and I leave here with a lot of experience. I just refuel my tank. You'll see more of me. I got more energy, but we got to work together. What's going on right now, what's going on the border right now with the kids from Central America really is an eye-opener for immigration reform. Why is it they can't get it right? We've got to get it right and make things happen. And that's about what I'm going to say about immigration reform. We have to get it done. And I want to just recognize Lily, who is with me by my side. Give her a big hand. Thank you very much, Lily. Thank you for being here. Again, Mr. President, thank you so much. God bless you, and thank you for being a great friend. And continue to do a great job. Thank you very much. God bless you.
One more round of applause for the cowboy. Yeah, we did it. All right, for the last 14 years, DuPont has had a platinum partnership with our conference. And we've called that partnership Cities United for Science Progress, or CUSP CUSP. The partnership has assisted mayors in making their cities safer, smarter, and healthier. Today, DuPont continues to strengthen this partnership by announcing the winners of the 2014 LEAD Safe for Kids State Grant Competition. I would like to announce and introduce my very good friend of the conference, DuPont Public Affairs Manager, Mary Kate Campbell, to give us an update on where we are with our partnership and to announce our award winners.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor Johnson. I'm happy to be here with all of you in Dallas to update you on our platinum partnership with the USCM and to announce the winners of our Lead Safe for Kids Sake grant program. Over the past decade, DuPont and the mayors have worked together on a number of programs, each designed to assist mayors in making their cities safer, smarter, and healthier. And as the partnership continues to grow and go in new directions, we continue to see tremendous results. Together, we have reached more than 40,000 students in 250 cities with our Science in the School Day program. Pairing the mayor with some of DuPont's most talented and dynamic engineers creates a truly memorable experience for all involved. The program recognizes the value of helping mayors inspire tomorrow's scientists and engineers to build better cities and better communities. For the students, this can be an eye-opening activity. First, they see someone who doesn't look like a stereotypical scientist. Our field engineering program is truly diverse. These young men and women come from a myriad of backgrounds. Second, they see in front of them a person who has successfully pursued a career in the sciences. Happily, STEM education is something that most of our kids do have access to in school. But what makes this different is the opportunity to interact with someone who today has a job that pays well, owns a car, owns their own home, and all because they got excited about science at some point in their education. And they continue to pursue excellence in their chosen fields. And it's not a lecture, it's a hands-on activity that gets everyone involved. Together, the mayor and the students explore basic engineering concepts with very simple materials and their imaginations. It's truly exciting to see what a class of 5th graders can do with straws, lifesavers, paper, and tape, and the challenge to build a car that will move across the gym floor. We all hope to get kids excited about science as early as possible, and we'd like to bring this program to your city. This year, we visited cities such as Mesa, New Orleans, Baltimore, Charlotte, and we have many more planned for the upcoming school year. Please get in touch with us and let us know that you'd like it, and we'd be happy to bring the program to your city. We believe that science is the key to addressing the challenges that we face around the world and in your cities. And this year, we introduced a new business to the USCM. Today, DuPont Science is focused on providing more and better food to a growing population, reducing reliance on fossil fuels, and protecting people and the environment. Collaboration is critical. Around the world and in your cities, we are working with academia, governments, other companies, non-governmental organizations to deliver scientific innovation that lead to long-term, viable, sustainable solutions. And recognizing that with this focus on agriculture comes a whole new category of scientists. This year, we will invite our food, nutrition, and agricultural scientists to participate in our Science in the School Day program. We hope that this will give students an even greater understanding of where their food comes from, but also the myriad of science-based jobs open to them. So in addition to mechanical engineers, civil engineers, and chemical engineers, we'll be able to offer biologists, agronomists, molecular biologists, really talented people who we hope will be able to inspire an even greater number of young people. Since the inception of our partnership, DuPont has put $5 million into your neighborhoods through the USCM DuPont Lead Safe for Kids' Sake grant program. And as a result, and coupled with federal programs, the reduction of elevated blood lead levels across the nation has been one of the biggest public health success stories of the past 50 years. With that, I am pleased to announce the winners of the 2014 USCM DuPont Grant Program. We have 4 winning cities. When I announce the winners, if they would please come up and accept the award and then remain on the stage for a group photo. The winners of the Award of Distinction and a grant of $50,000 are Mayor Stephanie Miner from Syracuse, New York, and accepting for Mayor Miner is Beth Ruggie, Director of Administration. Also receiving a grant of $50,000, Mayor Bill Finch from Bridgeport, Connecticut. Second place winner in a grant of $75,000 is Mayor Bill Peduto from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Accepting for Mayor Peduto is Kevin Acklin, Mayor Peduto's Chief of Staff. And the winner of our first place Award of Excellence and a grant of $100,000 is Mayor Dane Walling from Flint, Michigan.
Big money.
Congratulations to all the winners. Thank you all again for having us, and please enjoy the rest of the meeting.
All right, thank you very much. And we're now getting ready to move into some important topics. I would like to say we're going to begin to discuss maybe one, we've talked about education and how important it is. Yesterday and the day before, we talked about a pro-growth agenda, and we had 5 priorities, and today one of those priorities is going to be top of mind for each and every mayor here. So I want you to buckle up, because the next hour or so is going to be really, really important, and it gives us as mayors another opportunity to be leaders on a really, really significant issue. So I'd like to begin our national discussion on climate protection. Serious action on climate is critical. I'm emotional because Mayor Finch and a lot of you have been working on this, and it's finally here. It's finally here. And I don't know if you got a chance to see the article in the New York Times today, and I would encourage you. It says, "The Coming Climate Crash," and it's an opinion written by Henry Paulson Jr., and you know who he is, a former Secretary of Treasury. And this topic is about Democrats and Republicans coming together. So I would encourage you, if you haven't, to please read the article, because it will put all this in perspective for us. In the past, our economies have run on fossil fuels and unsustainable practices. And I call that 2.0. That's Cities 2.0, that era. But as we know, in Cities 3.0, mayors are getting smart on sustainability. We're moving away from fossil fuels to alternative fuels, from waste to reuse. Mayors are using technology and innovation to do what 2.0 critics said we could not do. We're boosting our economies and protecting our climate at the same time. And cities are leading this transformation. You as mayors in your cities are leading this transformation. One of the reasons why, this is what the U.S. Conference of Mayors has been known for. We've been a leader on this issue for many years. In 2005, the conference launched a national campaign to address climate change through the U.S. Mayors Climate Protection Agreement. Today, we have over 1,000 mayors who signed that historic agreement. Given the importance of this critical issue, we are holding this session where we will hear from Climate Protection Task Force co-chair, as well as administration's top energy and environment team. The administration is no longer a stranger to what we're doing, because they have brought us to the White House. We've met over and over on this issue of climate. For the last 5 years, President Obama and his team have tackled climate change by addressing the root problem, as well as preparing for the impacts we are already seeing. The administration has done this in numerous ways, including setting new fuel standards, cutting the cost of solar panels, and even reforming job training programs for the new energy economy. In fact, many mayors out there, including myself, have teamed up with Secretary Moniz on the President's Better Building Challenge to cut energy use in buildings by 20% in 2020. So I'm looking forward to this panel discussion. You're going to hear from some amazing people. Let me give you just a really quick overview of what today will look like. Today, as I said earlier, is a big deal because we're going to sign the 2014 Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. Mayors have been out front on this issue, on climate protection and resiliency for a long time, and we're going to continue to lead in those ways. We're also honored to have with us the administration officials, David Agnew, which I'll introduce a little later, our EPA Administrator, Gina McCarthy, which I'll introduce a little later, and our Secretary of Energy. So like I said, today is going to be a really, really big deal. And again, mayors, you should be proud of the work that you've done around the country on this particular issue. So at this time, I'd like to bring up our co-chair of Energy Independence and Climate Protection Task Force, the Mayor of Bridgeport, Mayor Bill Finch. Mayor Finch will be giving a report on the history and key activities that the U.S. Conference of Mayors Climate Task Force and Climate Protection Center have been doing. A round of applause for our champion, Mayor Finch.
Good morning. Thank you, President Johnson. I'm pleased to speak to you today on the great work that you and mayors throughout the United States have done on climate protection. I'd like to begin with a video that sets the stage for the following session. The video, please.
Climate protection didn't just start with our mayors yesterday. I could take you back when mayors joined with Senator Gaylord Nelson and others in creating the very first Earth Day in 1970. On that day, we had the nation's mayors standing together in a bipartisan effort with the great New York City Mayor John Lindsay to support our efforts and our goals. No, I won't take you back that far, but I must take you back to 2005 and salute the great Mayor of Seattle, Mayor Greg Nichols. It was his call to action to create a United States Conference of Mayors Climate Agreement. Following the Kyoto meeting in 2005, our government was not in a position to ratify an international climate agreement. 141 nations signed that agreement. On that day, Seattle Mayor Greg Nichols launched the initiative to advance the goals of the Kyoto Protocol through leadership and action by at least 141 American mayors to sign our climate protection agreement. We met his goals, we did it, and we didn't stop there. I worked hard with mayors to create a dynamic United States Conference Mayors Climate Center. Our goal was to have at least 1,000 mayors, unheard of before, signing our climate agreement. Conference President Burnsville Mayor Elizabeth Kautz led our organizations to meetings with the European Union. They replicated a similar agreement, and the Mayor of Mexico City led an effort to do the same in Latin America. Other organizations around the world have duplicated and followed us. In Copenhagen at COP15, we arrived with 1,000 mayors signed onto our climate agreement. While national leaders met in the main conference hall and did not reach an agreement, the United States Conference of Mayors sponsored an event honoring the Lord Mayor of Copenhagen and joined with mayors of London, New York, Los Angeles, Burnsville, and other mayors from around the world to continue to share best practices, to take action in the world's cities, even though our own national governments are stalled. But you know, it's more than just signing a proclamation or an agreement. It's doing something about it. And we have today the support of the Walmart Corporation, a dynamic awards program which for a decade brings the city's best practices front and center. We also have a partnership with Philips, and through their support, we continue to release reports and findings which validate what mayors are doing with their citizens on climate and energy each day. Today, with the leadership of Bridgeport Mayor Bill Finch and Carmel Mayor James Brainerd, who chair our climate task force, our climate center is as strong as it ever has been. While other leaders talk, mayors walk. And each day, our mayors are involved with our citizens, cutting carbon, using alternative fuels to save our planet. We're pleased that President Obama has appointed the Climate Task Force. We, the United States Conference of Mayors, will continue to lead on climate protection. And we appreciate our federal government joining with us as we continue to act daily with our business communities and our citizens to save this planet for us, our children, and our grandchildren.
The U.S. Conference of Mayors recognizes how critical mayors are to the work around climate change and climate protection.
Having the conference be able to be the convener of the nation's mayors is really powerful.
We all know that climate change is happening. We can argue about the cause of climate change, but climate change is happening. The city of Houston has reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by more than 32% since 2007 when we began to track it. I don't spend a lot of time talking about how we are reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I talk about how we are reducing costs.
For cities, streetlights are easy. They're low-hanging fruit because when you replace traffic lights or street lights or make your lighting in your buildings more energy efficient, you're reducing a lot of energy and your paybacks are very, very quick.
We're engaged in an initiative with our energy provider, CenterPoint Energy, to convert 165,000 streetlights across the city of Houston to LED technology. That will reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 5%, our energy use by 50%. In those streetlights and save $28 million. We're standing here in the city of Houston's historic Julia Idison Library. It was built in 1926. And people say over and over again, you can't do good energy efficient retrofits of historic buildings. And I'm here to tell you, you can. This is now a LEED Gold certified building that Houstonians are falling in love with all over again.
Over 120 buildings have undergone energy efficiency retrofits, and the paybacks are under 10 years. Wind is big in Texas. It's affordable, and it allows us to be a renewable energy leader. We've really undergone I'd say, public transit and transit sharing sort of revolution here. We have 3 new rail lines coming on board. We're expanding our hike and bike trail system by 150 miles. We have the 4th largest hybrid fleet in the nation.
It's good for the planet, but it's also good for the city's bottom line.
We look at energy in 2 ways. We look at it green in that it's green and sustainable, and green in that it saves our ratepayers money. When we do that, we move the ball tremendously ahead on energy and climate. People understand that not only is this great for the environment, but it's great for our pocketbook too. So here in Gresham, we have 8,000 street lights, and we're turning them all over to LED, and we anticipate that that'll have about a $500,000 a year savings to our ratepayers, plus provide better light and they'll last 67% longer. By the way, that came out of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I mean, that came to just talking to other mayors.
Even here in the Pacific Northwest, solar power works. We get good weather for solar 9-10 months out of the year. So as part of this project, we installed the solar trees right here next to light rail as an artistic expression that also generates power.
This wastewater treatment plant was our largest energy user in the city of Gresham. By the end of this year, we should be at 100%. It should produce 100% of all of the energy it uses right on site.
We're exporting 27% of our power production right now to the grid.
It also saves our ratepayers money to the tune of about $300,000 each year, so it's great investment for this city. That goes back into the general fund. It can either go into parks or to police officers or to fire and emergency services, so the quality of life associated with the revenue that used to be spent here is pretty substantive.
Climate protection is the right thing to do, and it is achievable.
The Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement and signing that was a great step forward. It really gave the municipalities a roadmap forward, and there was no top-down that we see so much from the federal government.
Their Climate Protection Center is a way to concentrate our knowledge and to share with each other as mayors.
And there's no other place that a mayor can go peer-to-peer where people understand exactly what it is they're going through, both in terms of the political challenge to some of these projects, as well as the practical challenge of implementing these programs.
I learn from other mayors every time I interact with them. It's important as mayors to come together and take advantage of the opportunities to learn best practices from each other and to put those best practices into implementation.
The mayors across this country have led, they've innovated, and they're making great and substantive changes to the environment. That's just wonderful to see.
We just heard from the conference and two great mayors who are leading on energy and climate in their own cities. And they were the first place winners in our Mayor's Climate Protection Awards, Mayor Bemis this year and Mayor Parker a couple years ago. So you just heard their stories, but there's thousands more stories just like that. Stories of sustainability for mayors, mayors of big cities and small cities, mayors from the east, from the west, the north, the south, mayors, Democrats, Republicans, independents, and nonpartisan office holders. You can call this movement whatever you want, but I call it getting off of foreign oil, creating jobs that can't be exported overseas, protecting our environment, and eliminating waste. We just heard about Houston and Gresham. Let me just briefly tell you what's going on in my city of Bridgeport. Our sustainability plan is called Be Green 2020, and it's a cooperative effort between our regional chamber of commerce and the city. It's resulted in building the largest fuel cell in North America, the second biggest one in the world. The creation of an eco-technology park with many new businesses, hundreds of new jobs, and a payroll addition to our economy of more than $10 million. It's resulted in the approval of a $20 million anaerobic sludge digester that's going to make our sewage plant more efficient and more energy independent, and it's going to clean our air. We all know that the energy block grants leveraged a lot of investment. That's just one, because we paid for the feasibility study for that with our energy block grant. It's also resulted in the beginning of the installation of one of the largest solar arrays in New England with the fuel cell. This solar array, together with the two, will move about 20,000 homes to clean and renewable energy. We're in the midst of building a green energy future. It looks a bit like this in every city. In every city, it's about the same thing: clean air, energy independence, new jobs and businesses, and getting rid of waste. In fact, one of my top business leaders said he wants Bridgeport to win the race to zero waste. It's great when your business leaders are talking like that. At the United States Conference of Mayors, we're showing these results in every city. On Earth Day, Mayor Jim Brainerd and I, my co-chair of the Energy Independence and Climate Protection Task Force, we released this summary, one of the 3 reports that our committee's released, and it tells part of the story. Let me just say what a pleasure it is to work with Jim Brainerd. He's one of the best leaders we have, and he's certainly one of the best leaders on climate protection, and I really enjoy working with Jim. This climate survey and our 2 other earlier surveys on energy block grants show how mayors are leading the country on climate. We learned through these studies, what we learned was our own experience, really, that mayors who signed on to the original Climate Protection Agreement as a group were doing more than others. It showed that mayors are moving our cities and our nation forward in the right direction. And because we've held ourselves accountable, it helps us motivate and innovate and invest in solutions. Since our first agreement was initiated, we've been acting locally, but we have been affecting carbon globally. Mayors first came together in February of 2005 to confront one of the defining issues of our lifetime. The agreement then was really only about climate mitigation and cutting carbon. At the request of President Johnson, we've updated this climate protection commitment. Importantly, it holds on to the basics of the original agreement, but it speaks further to adaptation and resiliency. and it calls us to ramp up our local grassroots action on a cleaner environment and protecting the climate. We must build on our earlier successes and move forward to the next decade and beyond. In the words of President Kennedy, our most basic common bond is that we all inhabit the same planet. We all breathe the same air, and we all cherish our children's future. Thank you, mayors, for remaining committed to that most common basic bond. And thank you, Mr. President, for leading us to cherish our children's future. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mayor Finch. Great perspective for all the work you've done. I also want to thank Mayor Brainerd. Where's Mayor Brainerd? Come on up here. Come up here and hang out with Mayor Finch. He's co-chair of the task force. Let's give one more round of applause for Mayor Brainerd. It's a good-looking tie you got on, Mayor. You dressed for the occasion. So as we prepare the next decade and more, I'm proud to announce that we're launching, reaffirming, and recommitting to do our part to reduce emissions and adapt our cities to the changing climatic conditions. With this new agreement, we will add to the more than 1,060 mayors who have previously pledged to take action in the original Climate Protection Agreement. As you will see in this agreement, I sent it all to you last night. So we sent it out to you last night. I hope you got a chance to read it. It's on your tables as well. So we made sure that every mayor had a copy of the agreement so you can see it firsthand. We're calling for the federal government and our state leaders to enact bipartisan policies and programs that support mayors and their local energy and climate initiatives. This will include local efforts to, 1, reduce the U.S. dependence on fossil fuels, 2, accelerate the development of clean energy, and thirdly, to deploy energy efficiency technologies. We also reaffirm our commitment to meet the locally established targets, and we pledge to support grassroots movements as it relates to conservation initiatives, Arbor Day and Earth Day. So right now, I'd like these mayors to come up and join me to the right, and we're going to sign this particular agreement today. I'd like our first Vice President, Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake. I would like our 2 co-chairs of the task force, Mayor Finch and Brainerd. I would like our Executive Director, Tom Cochran. And there's some other mayors who chaired our Environmental Committee. Is Mayor Stanton here from Phoenix? Of course. Mayor Stanton, please join me. And a few other members, Mayor Nutter, Mayor Becker, Mayor County, Mayor Parker. If you guys would all join me to the right, and we are going to participate in a very significant signing. So all mayors, stage right.
Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Here come bad news talking this and that.
Come on, one more round of applause. You got to be happy this morning.
If you feel like that's what you want to do.
All right, so while we will continue to develop and implement our local mitigation strategies, we must continue to be prepared for the increasing frequency of severe climate-related events. Like Mayor Brainerd, I'm pleased to be a member of the White House State, Local, and Tribal Leaders Task Force on Climate Preparedness and Resiliency. Other mayors and members who serve on this task force are with us here today. Again, Mayor Becker, Mayor County, Mayor Garcetti, Mayor Nutter, and Mayor Parker. One of the goals of this task force is to advise the administration on how it can respond to the needs of our communities nationwide as they deal with the impacts of climate change. Again, the article and the opinion in the New York Times today talked about if we were prepared or better prepared for financial crisis, there were things that we could have done differently. We also need to be prepared for the climate changes that are coming our way, and we've got to be smart, and mayors, you are always prepared. So to hear more about this work, I've invited the co-chair of the White House Climate Task Force and senior officials from the administration to be with us today. Following their remarks, you will hear an open dialogue and discussion about concrete recommendations for the president and his administration moving forward. So let me introduce our panelists, and I'm going to introduce them one by one, NBA style. NBA style. That's how we do it in the NBA. Let me get my voice ready. First joining us, on my far left, David Agnew, standing 6'2", 174 pounds. Let's give it up for David Agnew. Our second panelist on the left, the Secretary of Energy, the one and only Ernest Moniz. And lastly, the Boston Celtics fans. They're represented by a third panelist, the Honorable Gina McCarthy, representing the point guards of America and the WNBA. So, as you know, these folks represent the highest office in the land, and they have partnered with mayors on a regular basis. So David, we are really excited for you to facilitate a panel. We know how important each of these folks are to mayors here, and this is a small appreciation, I think, to you mayors for all the work that you've done, that they flew out to be with us here in Dallas. So David, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Johnson. I really appreciate that introduction. I gained 2 inches and lost 5 pounds. Great. It's great to be with you all. I want to thank Mayor Johnson for his leadership. Not only in Sacramento, not only of this organization, but for his national leadership. It meant a lot to me to look up on that screen during that discussion just a few weeks ago and to see a mayor stepping out, stepping forward, and making this country a better place. So thank you so much, Mayor Johnson. I want to thank the U.S. Conference of Mayors for having us here, as always, and for its leadership on the issue we're here to discuss today. Thank Mayor Finch and Mayor Brainerd for their leadership over the years. Pleased to bring you all warm greetings from the President. I saw him on Thursday afternoon as I was leaving and told him where I was going, and he said what he says to me a lot. He said, "Have a great time, I love mayors." So that's a personal greeting from the President. And for me, it's always great to be with America's mayors. For the past 5.5 years at the White House, I've only missed one of these meetings, and that was when I had a 4-day-old son, so I think I got a pass. I love being here, proud to have my team with me, Rohan Patel, Kellen Blossom, and Elias Alcantara, who work hard every day to connect all of you to the work of the White House. And when I look out over this audience, I see a lot of great friends and a lot of local leaders who are changing America for the better every single day. I want to make a few quick observations before we begin the discussion. First, I want to say that in Washington, D.C. these days, you cannot talk about any national issue without the discussion quickly turning to work with mayors. There is a national mayor's challenge on almost every national issue I can think of. And I worked for Joe Riley in Charleston, and so I know that's the way it needs to be. And I'm so happy that so many others around this country have realized that and are now looking to mayors to solve national problems. That phenomenon is certainly appropriate and not really new on the issue of climate change. We heard the description of what's happened since 2005. That has been the best example of thinking globally and acting locally that I know of. Mayors realized a vacuum in national leadership, and Mayor Greg Nichols, this organization, and so many others stepped up and filled that void. And over 1,000 mayors have signed that agreement, and more importantly, have been in their communities taking action, changing the way we use energy and produce energy, changing the way they build their communities. Those actions that have occurred in those 1,000+ communities over the last 9 years, that has been a remarkable success, and I think the new agreement that's being signed today is an important moment in this entire discussion, and we're so pleased as leaders from Washington to be here with you to celebrate that moment. In contrast to 2005, I think where we are now is that we have a president and an administration who know that national leadership is necessary and have been acting on that for the past 5.5 years and intend to do even more. While we know that national action and leadership is necessary, we also know that partnerships with the local government is really how to drive so many of the agenda items forward. That's why when the president announced his climate action plan last summer, he created a state and local and tribal leaders task force on climate preparedness and resilience that I'm co-chairing. Many mayors and 14 mayors on that task force, many of them here. I want to thank all those mayors for their service on the task force. We are working on a series of recommendations that we'll present to the president later this year that will hopefully make the federal government an even better partner with all of you as you work to prepare your communities for the inevitable results of climate change. We've traveled around the country. We were in Philadelphia with Mayor Nutter, in Knoxville with Mayor O'Hara, Carmel, Indiana with Mayor Brainerd, Salt Lake City with Mayor Becker, Los Angeles with Mayor Garcetti, Des Moines, Iowa with Mayor County. In these cities and so many more, mayors are quite simply changing the game. And when you get out and see what's going on, you know that to be true. And in these cities and so many more, I'm proud to say that what the mayors have been doing have been in partnership with a willing and enthusiastic federal partner in the U.S. government. But there's so much more to do, and that's why we're here today. I'm pleased to be joined this morning by two members of the President's Cabinet, EPA Administrator Gina McCarthy and Secretary of Energy Ernie Moniz. Administrator McCarthy has been at the EPA since the beginning of the administration, and in previous roles served Democrats and Republicans at the state level, including Governor Mitt Romney. And though she's only been in her current job for about a year, it's quite safe to say that she's making big waves in her current job. She led the administration's rollout of the Clean Power Plan a few weeks ago, and I can tell you personally she's been absolutely tireless in her outreach to governors and mayors to discuss why this rule is so important to our country and to the world. Energy Secretary Ernie Moniz is a brilliant scientist. He's a nuclear physicist at MIT, and he served President Clinton first at the White House at the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and then later as the Undersecretary of Energy. We were talking backstage about the fact that he's the first Energy Secretary to be there during his second tour of duty, and he reminded me of the Samuel Johnson quote about second marriage. It's the triumph of hope over experience. Secretary Moniz is currently leading the country's first ever quadrennial energy review, which is a comprehensive interagency deep dive into our energy policy. And he's already shown since he came into office that he too is committed to interacting, to listening, to hearing from America's mayors and other public elected officials. So I want to thank Secretary Moniz and Administrator McCarthy for being here today. I think their presence says a lot. So please join me in welcoming these two cabinet members to the U.S. Conference of Mayors. The first question I'd like to lead off with is this. is quite clearly been so much action around the country from mayors. So many mayors have already taken specific steps to reduce their carbon footprint. I'd like to hear from you all how your agencies have engaged with mayors so far in those efforts, and then what do you think some of the most promising areas are for engagement as we move forward and try to take that ball even further down the field?
Okay.
Well, why don't I kick it off?
All right, you go ahead, Gina.
Since he looked at me first, Arnie. First of all, let me thank the conference for all of their great work. It was really inspiring to watch that video and to know how long the mayors have been so engaged in this issue. And President Johnson, thank you for your continued leadership here. I don't know how many would be willing to stand up, but if I haven't been in your city over the past 6 months, you're likely to see me in the next 6 months. It has been a wonderful engagement that we have had with mayors talking about these challenges. And one of the reasons why we do that is because we know that you have been showing such tremendous leadership. You have been on the front line seeing that climate change and the impacts of climate change are really making a significant difference in your communities, and they're actually creating risks that you need to address and you need to take action to address. And the more that we can stand up and talk about not just those risks, but learn from you about the actions that you've been taking that have been beneficial, not just to reduce those risks, but to turn those risks into opportunities for your community. That is where we need to go. That is where U.S. leadership will begin to shine. And when the president stood up as a leader of this country and said the time for action is now, and he called on EPA to put out a plan to reduce carbon pollution from power plants because they were the largest source of carbon pollution that is fueling climate change and impacting the public health of ourselves and the future of our children. He called on EPA to do that, and he said to do it in the smartest way possible. And what we did was we actually went out and looked at what the mayors were doing. We recognized the actions that were taken, and we soon realized that the best thing we could do would be to put out a plan that was based on all of that learning experience. Don't try to do something new. Put out a rule that was just talking about the reductions we think are practical and affordable, that will open up markets for energy efficiency, for renewable energy, for green infrastructure improvements, for the ways in which you've already been looking at those opportunities. And so we put out a carbon pollution plan or a clean power plan that is really so flexible that all it does is set the goal based on where communities are right now, where the states are, and what you need to do is left up to each of the individual states to design. So if your state is worried about these actions, tell them not to be so worried. You have shown them what leadership on this issue can bring. Safer communities, more jobs, better economic growth, more parks, more bikes, sustainable development, the kind of 3.0 work that this conference is known for. And I want you to be at the table when your states are looking at how to develop these plans, because we left the world open to them to design their climate reduction strategies or their carbon pollution strategies in ways that would be beneficial to their cities, beneficial to their rural areas, completely in line where they want to go to grow economically as well as to address their energy needs. So as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about it. And every time I go to your communities, you're excited as well. And I want to thank you for your continued partnership. And let's hope we can get this over the finish line and really show the world what climate leadership is all about.
So, David, you repeated something that I've been accused of often, this idea of hope over experience. But I have to say, part of that hope we've already seen here this morning in terms of the mayors not only reasserting, but in fact upping the game in terms of dedication to climate, and working with the cities and states is something that we want to continue to build. And I'll come back to some of the things that we are doing, but it's absolutely critical. And it's not only here in the United States, but if you look globally, as you know, UN projects that we're on the way from 50 to 70% urbanization. if we don't manage climate, economic, security challenges at the level of cities, we just have no way of reaching the goals that we want. So, as a department, in addition to working with the council, frankly, since very shortly after I became secretary just over a year ago, we followed that. First, let me talk about an organizational move. We created a new Deputy Assistant Secretary, she's here, Alice Madden, specifically to focus on cities and states. And in fact, we've established a working group with the council, meeting often to not only compare notes, but to think of new paths forward. Secondly, in terms of kind of the programmatic directions, I do note that another element of the hope is that this Wednesday is the one-year anniversary of President Obama's Climate Action Plan. So I think your declaration is, I would say, a punctuation on that anniversary. Now, the Climate Action Plan had 3 major pieces, and let me just give a couple of highlights, especially as they relate to the work with cities. First, of course, is mitigation, to decrease the risks of climate change. And there, efficiency, for example, is something that we think is crucial, and we know and we've heard how crucial you think it is as well. So just a couple of examples. Efficient lighting. You know this, but we've been in Massachusetts to Detroit to LA and seeing the conversion of lighting with like 1-year payback periods to LEDs, for example. And what I find interesting is how often what we do for climate, for energy, has other implications. In this case, our understanding is that law enforcement loves this move to LED lighting. Better Buildings Challenge. Sacramento, other cities, it's incredible. These 20% reductions in energy use by 2020, we're going to beat that. I was also just on Friday in Chicago, another Better Buildings Challenge city, 30 million square feet under the challenge, and that's happening all over the country. Transportation sector, our Clean Cities program, putting in new infrastructure, whether it's for alternative liquid fuels or for electric vehicles, moving forward, and that starts right at home, frankly, in D.C. as one of the cities in the Clean Cities Challenge. So many things responding to this mitigation need. Let me just focus. The second area, of course, the Climate Action Plan brought forward was adaptation, the issue of resilience, and that's a big theme I know for you here. Let me talk about a few things there. One is we are doing a major effort this year. It's called the Quadrennial Energy Review. More precisely, it's the first year of the Quadrennial Energy Review, and we are focusing specifically on energy infrastructure and its resilience going forward. We are going to focus this on regional studies because that's where you have to look. It's not one size fits all. We know that. You know that extremely well. All I want to emphasize here is we are early in the process now of having many regional meetings in cities across the country to get input. We would love to have the mayors take part in all of these. We've done Providence and Hartford in the Northeast, New Orleans, we'll do Atlanta. We have Portland, Oregon to California. We have Bismarck, North Dakota to Chicago. We have Albuquerque to Denver. So we're going to be all over the country over these next few months and ask for your participation. In resilience, I'll just mention one more thing. Along, again, the lines of what we try to do with the cities is work that has multiple benefits. So, for example, with Chattanooga, a fiber optic project to decrease the frequency and the length of any power shutdowns, but they've integrated that into their entrepreneurial culture. With a very fast system that is attracting investors and startup funds, and in fact, on that, again on Friday, we were able to announce a new incubator initiative for clean energy, again, in about 5 cities across the country. So linking innovation to these climate initiatives. Another one in New Jersey with Hoboken, with the New Jersey Transit Authority, mini grids. Another thing where I know many cities are moving forward, mini grids for resilience, but mini grids also to allow new utility models, new energy services for your ratepayers. So those are just a couple of examples. The last thing I'll mention is in the plan, there was also a focus on international collaboration, and I'll say that 2 weeks ago, we co-hosted in Africa with over 40 African countries, an energy ministerial. And I just want to say here, think trade missions, the doors are wide open for U.S. companies to go into to Africa and to help them develop a clean energy future. So that's just a bit of an overview of some of the things that we are doing.
Thank you both. I'd like to dig in a little bit on the international question. Since mayors across America are taking action, and both of you have played and will continue to play a leadership role internationally representing the United States in the international discussions that take place, how does the work taking place across America impact those negotiations and those discussions, and what else can we do?
Well, clearly when the president put out his climate action plan, he was looking at focusing attention on climate resilience, which is what many mayors have been doing for so long. Also to address how we mitigate and reduce carbon pollution, but he also knew that in order to get a global solution to a global problem that is as big and as far-reaching as this and as important, you need to have U.S. leadership here. And so it was necessary for us to really show domestic leadership across the U.S. and highlight the work that has been going on in cities and states, and let the international community know that we were serious, and that the time for action, not just in the U.S. but internationally, is now. And we are seeing a change in those discussions, a change in the tone, and it's also just incredibly important, I think, for us to recognize that U.S. leadership in this context is not a bad thing for the economy or for energy production. The leadership we're talking about is taking actions that benefit everybody, that benefit public health, that will make our air cleaner and make our kids safer. You know, it's actions that just focus on reducing energy waste, which you've been doing for so long, and that look at low carbon and no carbon sources and how to maximize those. And when I know at EPA we've been working on pollution issues for a long time. Our utilities are regulated for every pollutant that we have identified that has a significant impact on human health and the environment. Carbon pollution is just another one of those pollutants. And what we have found every time is that when we put these regulations out, U.S. innovation then sparks. It just moves technologies forward. We have grown an international industry around pollution control technologies. We are selling in other countries the technologies that have been driven by the genius and the innovation and the entrepreneurship of U.S. businesses. This is what this is all about. The president isn't asking us to just address the risk. He's asking us to turn that risk into business opportunities for the U.S. So we're not going to just be a leader in how we address climate change. We are going to be a leader in building 21st century energy and economy that makes us not just safer domestically, but makes the economy in this country grow, because it will open up markets for renewables and efficiency programs immediately and allow then our innovation and our entrepreneurship to shine.
That's great. Thank you. Mr. Secretary?
Well, first, let me just reinforce a little bit of what Gina said and then add something to that. And I'm going to focus my remarks just to be specific on China, for example, for now. We have, in 2 weeks, with Secretary Kerry, Secretary Liu, and I, and others, will be in China for a major, what's called a strategic and economic dialogue. And and climate will play a major role. So first of all, in terms of showing leadership, I want to, as an anecdote, a couple of weeks ago, shortly after the EPA proposed rule came out, deputy minister of energy in China, basically said, wow, that's really interesting. That really shows leadership. And this is indicative of the importance of that leadership, the importance of being ambitious and yet flexible, because that's the way we're going to bring in China and other countries into addressing the challenges that we all believe are so important. But let me go beyond that a little bit. For example, the mayor's declaration on climate. You should not underestimate its importance in this context. Again, we all know mayors are very close to the action. Your constituents are people you know and you have to respond to. Well, that's true in other countries too. Mayors need to get things done. And that our mayors are coming forward is an important example of leadership, but also I think there are real opportunities in things like city-to-city collaborations. For example, Portland, Oregon and Kunming, China, looking in particular at efficient transit issues. These kinds of showing what you are doing to other mayors in other countries could be extremely effective and, as Gina implied, also open those doors for trade and for our companies. We should not underestimate the prize here. If one looks forward over the next several decades, the estimates for the clean energy infrastructure capital requirements average about $1 trillion a year. We want to be at the head of the train to take advantage of those economic opportunities. Domestically, the president is often emphasized, as you know, ladders of opportunity into the middle class. The energy sector has been right front and center in this country for the last several years, providing those ladders. My message is those ladders we need to put out there. We need to get everyone engaged. Women and minorities remain underrepresented in the energy sector. We got to bring them in, get a full talent base, and get out there and get a big market share of that trillion a year.
Thank you both. You know, one thing we've seen in the task force's work is that when we go out into communities, mayors are not sitting around debating the theory of climate change. They don't want to talk about why something might be happening or who's responsible for it. What they want to do is deal with the impacts because they're feeling the impacts, their neighborhoods are feeling the impacts. So they're, as we have said many times, they're taking action already. I'd like to ask Gina and Ernie, in terms of those impacts that we're seeing, which ones do you think are the most troubling, and what should we be doing through federal, state, local partnerships to address those right now?
Okay, I'll start on that. Well, first of all, of course, which ones you find the most troubling depends very much on where you are. Obviously, well, now we're officially into hurricane season. Of course, the most intense period is typically still ahead of us. But we all know the Sandy lessons, $60 billion of damage. Urban areas hit extremely hard. And we know, especially from the third National Climate Assessment Report that the administration issued a few weeks ago, this is not going to get better in terms of sea level rise, warmer waters, storm surges. So certainly from the Gulf all the way around up the East Coast, that remains a very, very critical area. I might add a little more bad news in the sense that, and the Climate Assessment Report was done before we even heard about the developments of the West Antarctic ice sheet, which could add a lot more to sea level rise in this 21st century, even more than we had predicted. So that's one area. But of course, other parts of the country, drought has, again, those of you in the Southwest and California know very well about this. But if we look forward to the expectations, these drier conditions are going to spread to a much bigger part in the plains, et cetera. And by the way, for energy, what these drought issues have very, very direct impacts. We have had a whole bunch of power plants have to shut down. How we plan the future of our energy infrastructure is going to be challenging. I'd like to refer you as well to a report that we issued just earlier this past week on the energy-water nexus. And I think it provides a very comprehensive view of how energy and water come together. That's water for energy, as I said, like power plants. It's also energy for water, how you manage your wastewater systems, how runoff is managed. These are all going to be critical issues exacerbated by climate change. And finally, just as another example, the issues of wildfires. You know, we saw the governor of California have to declare an emergency for power supply to San Francisco because of wildfires in the Sierra. So, you know, this all kind of comes together, and we are at risk, and that's why we want to work with all of you in terms of planning resilience opportunities.
Thank you. I just want to add, you know, when last week we had the president from the Situation Room connected to a group of Western governors who were meeting in Colorado Springs to talk about drought and wildfire. And I can say for those governors, some of them very partisan indeed, that discussion was not about the causes of climate change or why it was happening or whether it was real. Those governors wanted to talk about the same things you all want to talk about. What do we do about it? And how can we create a federal, state, local partnership to solve some of these problems? So I think that recognition is universal across the board.
Actually, David, let me just add one footnote on that. I should just say, and again, I think I don't take this as defeat. I take this as a challenge that we have to work together to address. But for example, very, very large-scale modeling in one of our laboratories, Los Alamos in this case, points out how dramatic is the challenge to all of our western forests over this century if we don't grab hold and mitigate climate change risks.
Absolutely. Administrator?
I think, let me just add one further point, because it became apparent to me when we rolled out our Clean Power Plan that people were not really focused on this issue. And I think I just want to remind everybody that climate change is a public health problem, as well as an economic problem, not just about natural resource issues. And let me be very clear about this, because our Clean Power Plan actually identifies $93 billion in benefits associated with allowing states the flexibility to achieve these reductions moving forward based on where they are today and where they want to head and how they want to invest their dollars. The climate change actually exacerbates health problems, most notably for our kids and our elderly. When you have higher temperatures, you have higher ozone levels, you have longer allergy seasons. We are looking at significant public health impacts to the most vulnerable among us. 1 in 10 kids today have asthma. 1 in 10. If you look at the Hispanic population, it's 2 in 10 kids have asthma. Climate change is about asthma attacks. It's about respiratory illnesses. It's about longer allergy seasons. It's about heat damage that people face. And this is most notably our kids and our elderly. So while I understand that it has broad impacts, I don't want people to forget that this is a pollutant that we're talking about, and it has significant impacts. And when you go and grab that carbon pollution, along with that carbon pollution, you grab a lot of traditional pollutants out of the air, and you get rid of it so that we can keep our communities healthier. And the last issue I want to recognize is that if you look at who is most at risk in climate, it's not just the kids and our elderly, but it's low-income and minority populations. They are always most damaged by impacts of climate change. They are the ones most at risk. Mayors know very well that if they focus on those areas for both economic growth and to improve health, then you can make your community shine. you can really make it an engine for economic growth. And so I want to encourage you to look at this also as an environmental justice issue. We know when stormwater hits, what communities get flooded. We know that if you look at green infrastructure in those communities as a resolution to that, then you can provide beautiful green spaces, bikeways that can turn neighborhoods around. You have to look at this not just as do we have to take action, but how can I run towards those actions to make them work for me so that we can protect public health and build our community and address those most vulnerable to the environmental challenges that we're going to be facing. Thank you very much.
Come on, mayors. Round of applause for our secretary, our administrator, and David. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, hold tight. Those were the easy questions. Now, you as mayors, we get a chance to have an interactive discussion. Please give us your thoughts or your recommendations. We are the ones who have an opportunity here to contribute in a real way. So, David, you got them warmed up. All right, so I know we have folks with mics around, and I see hands going up. We'll try to get through as many as we can. I'd like to start off with Mayor Becker.
Thank you, President Johnson. Thanks for your great leadership. 3.0.
You got it. You got it.
And, I might just say as an intro that, I really appreciate that in this conference we focused on education and we focused on this issue now, climate change. As we look towards our future, they are the two most critical issues we face in our communities. So thank you for that leadership there. And I want to also say thank you, Administrator, David, Secretary, and the President. The leadership you've shown through the Climate Action Plan gives us really the momentum at the local level to do what we know we need to do to build our communities in a safer and healthier way. So thank you so much for that. It's incredible. We just have not seen it before, so thank you. So question. We've really been, I think all of us have been admiring the steps you've been taking to move us forward on climate action, addressing climate disruption, climate change. And you've talked about some specific things that are happening, obviously. But we've seen, I think, some of the greatest results for us at the local level. When you've combined your forces among agencies and interagency work, like we've seen with the Sustainable Livable Communities effort, with the real partnership that occurred with EPA and HUD and USDOT. And it's enabled us to really leverage our resources and your resources in ways I think we haven't seen before. And I'm wondering how you see the work you're doing today, maybe tying those federal agencies together better horizontally, and then how you might see that happening vertically in a way that we can take the work out of this great agreement that was done today and really leverage all of our resources together.
Can I take a quick stab at that? And Mayor Becker, thank you for all of your leadership working with EPA and our local government advisory committee, but it was fun to spend a day with you. Salt Lake is a fabulous place. And I love the competition. I love this building competition. It's just great. But anyways, I would say, first of all, thank you for the agreement. It shows continued leadership. But what the mayor was referring to is the Partnership for Sustainable Communities, which is a partnership between DOT, HUD, EPA, and USDA. And it's been an incredible journey to see how good it is when we coordinate and we give one place to go to access grants that are meaningful and support and technical assistance. It's provided more than $4.5 billion to more than 1,000 projects in 50 states. It's exactly what you want the federal government to do, which is really, that's what 3.0 is all about. And we see this continuing to grow. When I know you're going to hear from Mayor de Blasio in a bit, that we're bringing that same creativity when we're looking at how to respond when damage has already been done. So we're not building the same wastewater treatment systems that got flooded before in the same way that they're going to get flooded the next time. So we are coming together, and that's because of the President's leadership. He does not want us to be in little silos, and instead he wants us to be able to work with communities in the same way you have to address a problem, which is across every media, thinking about your entire city. And we're really being challenged to do the same. And in my opinion, it's working beautifully. We have great partnerships. When EPA goes to do a green power plan, I don't sit and contemplate what EPA thinks renewable energy is and what it's going to do. I call on Ernie and I say, where's your team? And I go to FERC and I say, what's the reliability challenges here? How do we address them? The entire administration is working in concert with one another in these issues and wants to do just what you do, which is meaningful action as quickly as possible in the least expensive way that drives the economy as fast as we can. And it's been remarkable. And we're open to any suggestions. As you know, the Partnership for Sustainable Communities has been wonderful. We're actually announcing our new Greening America Capitals second round, where we can get some opportunity for towns and cities to access those funds. There are things that we can do together, and if there is more, I'd love to hear it. EPA's even opening up our hands and saying green infrastructure is a good reason why we may want to do cheaper ways of getting our stormwater done. Tell us how, we'll open it up, we'll accept it, we'll run with it. It's a partnership opportunity like no other. Awesome. Thank you.
Mayor, you ready? So I want to, Mayor Becker, thanks for your question. We're going to come up to our mayor here. One of the things I just want to commend the administration, and President Obama did it the moment he got elected. He brought us mayors to the White House, and he said, I'm going to break down silos apart across departments. And in Sacramento, we had a meeting, we're called Region 9. We had EPA, HUD, and Department of Transportation all together. And it had never happened before, and we did that in like 2010. And this is an example of building on that. So again, mayors, you are giving real input at the federal level where they're taking our input and making it happen in a reality. So that was a great example of breaking down those silos.
Yeah. Let me just add a comment as well to that. Certainly, first of all, Mayor Johnson seems to prefer basketball, but Gene and I are such a great team that we together threw out the first pitch at Fenway, you know, for the Red Sox. But this collaboration is real. I just want to mention one other example, which was a prime example of working together, and that was again in the post-Sandy period with the block grants. And in fact, what I mentioned earlier about smart grid was exactly as Gina said. We're looking at rebuilding infrastructure smarter, not just replicating what we had, but smarter to be resilient and better economic drivers for the 21st century. And we still hope, for example, our administration has proposed 2 years in a row a race to the top for energy efficiency and energy infrastructure, for example. If Congress approves, we'd love to go forward with that kind of a program, which has states and cities coming forward with proposals to use these kinds of funds.
Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. President. John Dickert from Racine, Wisconsin. I think we can also add sustainability into that infrastructure redevelopment, but we can talk a little bit more about that later. First of all, I want to thank you for breaking down the silos. That is the fastest way to make redevelopment happen. The one question I want to ask, though, is we're in the first stages of redeveloping a 15-acre site in the city of Racine, downtown area, that was former industrial, JIK's tractors. They built tanks in World War II. It's been sitting for 40 years. My question is, we're looking at doing, and I don't know if it's the first, but we're looking at doing the first ever LEED development. So the entire development is LEED, potentially LEED Platinum. So what I'm wondering is there a way to work with you to make that happen? New energy sources, reuse of water, purple water, gray water, the whole bit, stormwater management. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility that we could actually do a LEED Platinum development.
Well, I'd love to be able to work with you on it. You know, one of the fascinating things, and one of the best programs actually EPA is our brownfields program. I mean, it is great to call attention to areas where economic growth is so possible with a little bit of ingenuity. The other thing we've added to not just funding to help assess and help move forward on the remediation of those sites to turn them back to good use again is we've also done a training program associated with brownfields, where we actually use it as an opportunity to offer training in how to learn how to do remediation work so that you can become economically viable, and it's been a great program. And there may be a way of marrying that with folks who are getting training in LEED certification in new technologies and availability of that. So I'd love to be able to work with you on it. I think many of you know we do a lot of work on energy efficiency and collaboration across with DOE and others. And I'm sure we can get together and figure out how to be helpful.
And in terms of the issue of, for example, integrating renewables, let's say, into a project like that, again, in another area we would be very delighted to work with. For example, our Sunshot program has a kind of a technology development piece, but it also has a huge focus on, for example, what are the best practices to reduce the soft costs. The soft costs now dominate the costs in terms of distributed solar generation. So that's an example of what we can do. Last thing I'll mention, and I don't know if this would be applicable. It depends upon the kinds of projects that you have in mind. But the Department of Energy, we have, let's say, reinvigorated our loan guarantee program for energy technologies that kind of push the envelope and for which what's very favorable financing could be important. We have $40 billion of authority remaining. We have active calls for fossil energy technologies that reduce emissions, for renewables and efficiency, and for advanced vehicle technologies, like could be auto suppliers, for example, who let's say are going to retool for the efficient vehicles needed to meet the CAFE standards of 2025. So we have a suite of programs, and what I would suggest is, again, Alice Madden is here someplace. She over there, and she is working directly with the Conference of Mayors, and she can be a kind of a gateway to get information about all these program options.
And I'll just add that Mayor Dickert, being a mayor, he's already given me the land plan for that project, and he was working me pretty hard yesterday.
Great.
Okay, so in the interest of time, we're going to get 3 more questions. We have one here, one in the far back, and the mayor in the white in front.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Department of Energy and the EPA. I have a question because we live in a small town in South Florida, and in the middle of the town we have a landfill. You know, I think we working in these sustainability cities, but how we can have, when we're talking about helping the environment and, you know, talking about protecting the people from what is going to happen in the future with the climate, and we don't see what is the problem with those landfills in the middle of the town. That's the first question. The second one is we see South Beach and Miami Beach getting floating with the water coming in the cities, and it's also something that we have to take care of. And the third question is the power plants. We see the proliferation of nuclear power plants, and we're going to have 2 more in Homestead in South Florida, and instead of eliminating those power plants and getting more solar panels and things like that to the sustainability of the city, we see the proliferation of these nuclear plants.
Well,
You start.
all right. On the landfill issue, I'm happy to work with you. The disturbing thing about landfills is that if we actually did better on zero waste, you wouldn't need them. Part of the interesting thing about recycling and reuse is how much lower it makes greenhouse gas emissions. So there's lots of opportunities for us to look at those issues, as well as to look at the challenges that monitoring and making sure that landfills are safe and effective. It continues to be a challenge, and we can work on that. They also present an interesting opportunity for energy generation as you recapture methane from landfills that we're also pushing towards and have a new reg that we're looking at as well. So there's a lot of opportunity for zero waste. On the power plants, we have taken action. The most important message for me on the power plants, the proposal that we just put out, is that, again, it looks at how states can move forward practically and affordably in what we need to achieve in every state for reductions, but it leaves the plan entirely up to states. So if there is an opportunity for you to sit down with your state and look at how that's designed so that it can meet multiple goals and address issues that you've been working on and support the efforts that you've been taking, and that would be great. And let me hit the water issue as well. I recognize, and I have recently been down to Florida, I know Tampa is not only facing flooding, but the salt water is actually infiltrating into their drinking water supplies. So we're not just dealing with, a property issue. We're dealing with a significant public health challenge that we need to work on together. And I think we need to stop worrying about the partisanship of whether or not we want to talk about climate change and focus on real actions that make a difference in people's lives that everybody would agree that you really should do. I think, President, what I'd like to say is that we are not dealing with three-pointers here. These are slam dunk actions, right? Slam dunk. Layups.
She knows her basketball terminology. Do you know what a mid-range jumper is?
Yeah.
All right, last two questions. Please make your questions short, and then we'll get an answer from each of them, and then we've got to move on to our next section. So, Mayor?
Yeah, I have a question. We have a lot of mandates that are coming down. This is Mayor Arakawa from Maui. We have a lot of mandates that are coming down. Our wastewater facilities, we're being required to do a lot of work with them. And yet the federal funding that was originally used to build a lot of these things seems to have dried up. These major programs that we need to do, for instance, in a lot of areas where we had wetlands that were allowed to be built over, we need to be able to have funding to relocate or recreate a lot of these wetlands. What do you think is going to be the potential for federal funding to be able to come in and assist a lot of the communities with these kinds of programs?
Mayor, what city are you from?
Maui, Hawaii.
Well, let me again note that this report that we issued last week on energy and water, and it also involves some energy, water, land interactions, is one that I would recommend to you. It is our beginning to try to get information out there for a multi-agency activity, because the report, we issued it Department of Energy, but it also talks about EPA and Interior and other agencies. To me, this is the beginning of our trying to lay out a plan in terms of what our needs are, and then how we can propose what has to be ultimately a legislative path forward. And that, as we all know, has its challenges right now, but the President is been consistently and strongly committed to the need to rebuild infrastructure in this country, and certainly our water infrastructure, which, as I said earlier, is very much coupled to our energy infrastructure and to energy land decisions, is certainly paramount in that effort of the President's.
All right, let's hear our last question, Mayor, from West Palm Beach. Stand on up. Mike in the front. Come on, Mayor, get an assist. There we go. Mike, man, you're going the wrong direction. Right here in the front.
I wanted to offer to go to Maui next February if he wanted me to take a look at.
I'd love
it. It would be painful, but I could do it.
Identify yourself so everyone can hear.
All right, good morning. This question is for the Administrator McCarthy. My name is Jerry Moyo. I'm the mayor of West Palm Beach, Florida, and you can come to West Palm Beach. It's also very nice. My question is a water question. I need your help. We are a surface water system. We have a water catchment area that's a pristine remnant of the Everglades, originally designed by Henry Flagler. FDOT is proposing to build a road through our water catchment area. We have been fighting this. They completed an environmental assessment. We are hoping to stop the road, but if we can't stop the road, we are demanding an environmental impact statement from the Federal Highway Authority. Could you advocate for us with the Federal Highway Authority? Break down those silos and tell them that how can you move forward with a road through a water system that's a pristine remnant of the Everglades, where we're paying billions of dollars to restore the Everglades. I need your help.
Well, let me connect right after the session is over. I'm more than happy to get the information. You know, just let me bring it up just a little bit. I know we all have these challenging problems, and I'm more than happy to work with you. One of the things EPA is trying to do is to give a lot more technical assistance to communities and tools that you can use yourselves when you're looking at environmental impacts on how you can calculate those. And I'd really encourage you to check those out. There are opportunities for you to speak for yourselves more effectively and to understand the impacts, but also to design your systems more effectively in a changing climate, like our stormwater calculator and our utility programs where we're looking at climate-ready utilities. And we'll work together on this issue, and if we can be helpful, we certainly will.
Awesome. I know we have Deputy Secretary, Ms. Madam, come up here so we can see who you are. Mayors need to know who the point of contact is. Come, walk across, walk all the way over. She got a jump shot, look at her. All right, so mayors, on your desk, you have on your tables, you have a copy of our agreement. We need you to sign it and hold it up, please. And then staff is gonna pick it up. Can we please give one more huge round of applause for our panelists and the great job they've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Photo? Secretary, can we take a group photo real quick?
Hey, how are you?
Claiming to be part of panel, I didn't.
Yeah.
New York City's on every panel, baby. We just might the administrator feel short, so there you go.
Hey, Mr. President, he wasn't on the panel. We can put him in.
Yeah, we're making an exception.
Substitution.
You get on the end.
No, I'm fine. Paparazzi. All right, there we go.
That was a keeper.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And she really means it when she says that you'll come. And she'll work with us.
All right, mayors, we are going to get started. I know our panelists are in demand, and I don't blame you. Thanks, Secretary. They are drawing a mighty big crowd. All right, we are now moving on to the next aspect of our program. Let me now call on our CEO and Executive Director, Tom Cochran, to announce a new partnership with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just say, thank the White House staff who worked so hard with us. If you don't mind, Mr. President, you know, with staff. And thank David Agnew and Rohan Patel and Kellen and Elias. And also Maria Sheriff, who we've all worked in your team to make this great panel. Every now and then you got to give people who work so hard shout outs, and thank you for the opportunity. Mr. President, I would like to introduce Mike Reiser, who's Executive Vice President and Director of Community Relations for Wells Fargo. Mike's here with us this morning to announce another dynamic program, a special relationship with the Conference of Mayors to pursue neighborhood stabilization, revitalization projects with mayors. Wells Fargo has been working with the Conference of Mayors on mortgage foreclosure prevention and property disposition for several years. They're a great partner. Let's welcome Wells Fargo, Mr. Mike Reiser.
Thanks, Tom. Thank you. Hey, President Johnson, how are you? Thank you so much. This has been a great conference, President Johnson, and Dallas has just done a fantastic job of hosting us. I think it's fair to say we've worked hard, but they've created an environment that we could play hard as well, so it's really been fantastic. I'm going to take just 2 minutes. I know we're a little behind, but I've got something very important and exciting to share with you. You know, the last couple of days I've been in sessions around community development, helping our veterans, education, energy this morning, and I always am very inspired by how hard each and every one of you are working in your communities. And Wells Fargo feels the same way. We're very committed to our communities, and we're very committed to finding solutions to these very tough urban issues that affect your constituents in our neighborhoods. And that's why 3 years ago, we created an alliance with the United States Conference of Mayors, and we've been able to do some great things together. We've come out into your communities, sat with you and your staffs and our customers and people in your communities and looked for ways to help them, for example, on foreclosure prevention. And we found that when they sit down with us, in 7 out of 10 cases, we were able to find a solution for them. We also looked at community development issues and home ownership issues. And under the rubric of what we call leading the way home, we've put over $200 million in 27 of your communities to help 7,000 people become homeowners, 7,000 more homeowners. And they weren't necessarily our customers, but we thought it was important to put that capital out into the neighborhoods to recharge them, to get them restarted again. So we're very excited about that. We're very proud about that, but we know that there's much, much more to do. And so I'm very excited today to just give you a little bit of a headline, and I hope whet your appetite. We will fully roll this out at the 2015 winter meeting, but Wells Fargo is going to place $3 million into a competitive pool over 3 years, so $3 million over 3 years, in which the cities will compete for the money, which will go to nonprofits who will in turn work on rehabilitation and renovation and economic development issues in the neighborhoods. The U.S. Conference of Mayors is going to administer it for us. They're going to help with the process, and more details will come. But we wanted to give you a little bit of a headline this morning and look forward to launching it next year at the annual meeting. We're very proud of this relationship. We think that we've accomplished a lot together. And thank you so much for the work you do every day. We leave here with lots of appreciation for how hard you work for all of us. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of the meeting. Thanks, President Johnson. Appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Mike, for being efficient, and we appreciate that. And Sacramento is one of the 27 cities that have benefited from your program, so we thank you so much. It is now my pleasure to introduce a mayor. From the beginning of his term, has been a huge supporter of what we do here at the U.S. Conference of Mayors. In fact, he tried to come out earlier and got stuck in a snowstorm and still figured out a way to get there, which I still don't quite know how he pulled that off. Absolutely. He got elected in January and has already done some amazing things. And you remember in my open inauguration, I talked about Cities 3.0 and a pro-growth agenda. We talked about this notion of preschool and universal preschool. He's leading the way on that. We're talking about affordable housing. He's leading the way on that. So I am very proud to say that he is going to address us today. In my inauguration, I talked about appointing a new task force that Mayor de Blasio will be chairing. It's called the Cities of Opportunities. And I'm excited that he will be leading this fight around the country for all of us, addressing our pro-growth agenda. I'm also happy to say that Mayor Walsh from Boston will be joining our mayor here in terms of this task force. All mayors who care about income inequality and these issues, we've talked about rising. We're talked about what cities are supposed to do. We're supposed to uplift the environment for all and the least among us. We need to be cities that work for everyone, and this mayor here gets it. In fact, taking it a step further, in August 10th and 11th, we're going to be in New York at Gracie Mansion. We're going to take the mayor's leadership group there, and we're going to talk about what an innovative and aggressive plan looks like. Can we give a round of applause for the New York mayor, the one and only, Bigfoot, Mayor de Blasio.
What size shoe you wear? That's a cartoon right there.
Thank you so much. I have to say that, Mayor Johnson, we are blessed to have you as our president of the Conference of Mayors. You've brought tremendous leadership and energy and a vision already that for us in New York is exciting. It helps us and propels us forward in our effort. You, as the 72nd president of this organization, I think you're off to an extraordinary start. I want to thank you for all you're doing locally as well. And since today's topic has been how we address climate change, I want to thank Mayor Johnson for what he's doing in Sacramento to show us all that economic growth has to be green growth. And we thank you for that. And just on a personal note, something I think a number of us feel, mayors are called upon to do a lot of different things. I don't think Mayor Johnson a few months ago would have anticipated having to step into the national spotlight to address an incredibly troubling moment, but thank God he did, and his efforts to prevail upon the NBA were crucial to healing something that could have been a very, very painful episode if it weren't dealt with aggressively, and Mayor Johnson, you did the right thing for all of us, so thank you for that. Now, we have so many leaders here, a part of this panel. I'm coming in on the tail end, and I want to reference, of course, the crucial issues on climate change. I just want to contextualize them in the larger fight against inequality and the work we all have to do to address what unfortunately is growing inequality of so many different types in all of our cities and across our nation. I'm gratified that Mayor Johnson has asked me to lead our new task force, and I'm going to do that with all I've got, and I look forward to the participation of so many of you. But I want to thank the folks who are part of this panel, Mayor Finch, who's doing great things as a leader among all of us on climate change. I want to thank David Agnew for always listening and always helping us at the White House, and that is a major matter, and Secretary Moniz, and of course Gina McCarthy at the EPA. All of them have been supportive, and we appreciate their efforts on climate change, and we need them. And let's face it, this is one example of a set of issues where we as mayors play a particular role in this country because by definition we're at the front line. And we're at the front line whether we get help from the federal government or not, whether we get help from our state governments or not. Our people expect us to perform. Our people expect us to produce no matter what crisis is thrown at us. Climate change has produced very real and immediate crises, and yet the solution, of course, goes so much farther than the question of whether we recover from whatever immediate disaster confronts us. In New York City in 2012 with Hurricane Sandy, literally the worst natural disaster in the recorded history of New York City. Something we never would have anticipated, something that affected hundreds of thousands of our citizens, immense property damage, immense dislocation, and we're still, slowly but surely, resolving all the crises that came out, all the pain, all the crisis, all the challenges that came out of Sandy that's still very real for tens of thousands of New Yorkers. That's our frontline mission. I think so many of you around the room are engaged in similar efforts to recover and rebuild and prepare for the future based on that which you've experienced already. But we all have to get to the heart of the matter. I know that's what this panel was about, of actually addressing climate change more fundamentally, and so much of that has to happen by definition at the federal level, at the state level. But again, if we are mindful of the fact that sometimes those levels don't act with the same urgency and clarity that we do as mayors, it is therefore incumbent on us to lead the way through action, as is true in so many cases. I know I'm preaching to the converted, but I think it's important to say we can have a huge impact on the climate change debate because we don't just debate it, we act on it. I look at my city, and I have to tell you, we haven't to date done what we could have when you think about the thousands of public buildings that happen to exist in New York City, school buildings, public housing, et cetera. This is fertile ground for energy retrofits. And I think it's true in cities all over the country. Those buildings that we control directly should be the first rung of all we do to address climate change, because the national and international steps are needed for sure. But we know how pivotal a source of pollution buildings are, and we know that retrofits will make a huge difference, and we have the tools because we own the buildings. In New York City, in these coming months, we're going to put together a plan to aggressively go at those thousands of public buildings. So we'll have a tangible impact in our own corner of the world on the impact on the pollution that's causing climate change. But we hope also to work with all of you to show what a powerful model cities can create for local action, and to show that it should be a template for state and federal action, to show that what we do locally actually affects people's lives, creates a greener planet, helps us pull back from the brink of crisis, and it has to be something that provides a model, a spark, a sense of urgency in Washington. And at the same time, that we address the climate change crisis, that we address the issues of environmental sustainability. We know as mayors, we can't look at them in isolation because we're all dealing with the economic realities we face every single day. I always say we have to think of environmental sustainability and economic sustainability in the same breath. We have to think about our efforts to address climate change locally, our efforts to reduce pollutants locally, to create energy efficiency locally, as also tremendous job creation engines. And job creation engines that we can use to address larger inequalities, that we can use as a venue to help people who've been left out of the economy to get good paying jobs, as we can use as a way to spark a kind of economic opportunity that hasn't been there before. Everything we do as mayors, by definition, we try and stretch every dollar. We try and get not one bang for a buck, but as many different possible impacts as we can. In the area of retrofitting and environmental sustainability, we have a great opportunity to not only achieve, but turn these tools towards the larger work of economic fairness. And the beautiful thing about us as mayors, we know how to do things. We have to know how to do things. We don't have the luxury of waiting. We don't like to wait. We don't wait. We do things now. That spirit has to bubble up more aggressively to our state capitals and to Washington. Sometimes we have to lead by example when every other entreaty fails. And I think when it comes to energy retrofitting and addressing climate change, we have a crucial opportunity to create a kind of momentum that hasn't been there before at the federal level. Now, I just want to frame this quickly in the context of the larger fight against inequality. We're in a country, again, by definition, that over generations has prized and cherished the notion of opportunity and fairness and equality, and yet it has slipped away more and more with each year in recent decades. When I ran for mayor last year in New York City, I talked about a tale of two cities. I think every one of us understands that phrase from our own perspective, because we can see every neighborhood, every block in our cities, and we know where people are blessed to be doing well, and we know where people have been hurting and hurting for many, many years. And we know that for so many people it's getting tougher. Our host, Mayor Rawlings, said something on Friday that's worth repeating, and it really struck me. He's talking about Dallas, but he's talking about what it meant for all of us as well. He said there's a train headed for us, and in the next couple of decades, if we're not able to stop that train, he talked about the dangers we face. He said, I imagine that many of you have the same train bearing down on your cities. We need to work hard to share best practices and recognize the severity of these problems, because the long-term success of our cities and the nation hangs in the balance. I think Mayor Rawlings got it exactly right. We're not asking for help in fighting inequality out of some sense of local privilege. We're doing it because not only do we have to solve the problems of our people, we have to help this nation avert the crisis that would come if we don't address these problems and if our cities remain unsupported, since we are more and more the economic engines and core for this country. I always remind people, look around the world, look at your competitors. In the countries in the world that are vibrant and growing, they're investing and they recognize their cities as the magnets for talent and innovation and entrepreneurship, and they invest in education and research and infrastructure, and it's helping them move ahead. It's not happening here. So when we say to Washington, or when we say to leaders in our state capitals, we need that kind of investment, it's not just to avert our immediate challenges or to recognize that inequality crisis that grows in and of itself is corrosive. It's also because we can't be that economic core for our country if the federal government and state governments don't participate actively and aggressively with us. Look at the numbers, look at the reality of a country where there are some very wealthy people and they are getting wealthier, and then a huge proportion of our population is mired in a dynamic with low income and stagnating incomes no matter how hard they work. There is a clear absence of opportunity. We know it. We talk to our constituents all the time. It's palpable. People trying to figure out how to find housing, how to find a decent job, how to even put food on the table, more and more of a challenge in so many of our cities, how to do something that used to be a common thing, afford the educational opportunity for their children, that's now more and more of a source of doubt for our constituents. And these numbers are staggering. The gap between the very rich and everyone else is at historic levels. In 2012, the top 1% received nearly 24% of all pre-tax income, 24%. The bottom 90% received 49.6% of all pre-tax income. It's the first time that the bottom 90% has made less than 50% of our national pre-tax income. The middle class are eroding between 2007 and 2012. Wages fell for the whole bottom 70% of wage earners in this country. 70% of our people in recent years have experienced, in real terms, a decrease in their wage levels. And that's the same time as productivity grew nationwide 7.7%. So people are working hard, people are working smarter, they're doing a better job. We see every day it's not helping them get ahead. They are slowly but surely falling behind. And then we try to catch the china falling off the shelf constantly as mayors and do our best to address people's needs. But we need bigger solutions by definition. And we need to start by convincing some folks out there who don't see the depth of the crisis or aren't feeling what it means, or are blind to it, who are ignoring it, or maybe are people of goodwill and just haven't had the opportunity to understand. We have to show them that this is an American crisis, that this kind of growing inequality is fundamentally un-American. It doesn't comport with our values. This was a nation founded on notions of equality. It was not founded to have a small economic elite and then vast amounts of population struggling. And I can speak to this because our founding fathers actually were quite explicit. Here's a quote from Thomas Jefferson in 1785. He said, quote, "Enormous inequality producing so much misery to the bulk of mankind," end quote, was a deep concern for him. And he urged steps like strongly progressive taxation. Here's Thomas Jefferson in 1795. He said we needed a way to, quote, reduce, quote, "the inequality of property is to exempt it from all taxation below a certain point and to tax the higher portions of property in geometrical progression as they rise." Thomas Jefferson laying out very clearly the dangers of inequality and the need to act aggressively. Here's James Madison, who only wrote our Constitution, saying government should prevent, quote, "an immoderate and especially unmerited accumulation of riches." And so out of those ideas grew a country that thrived and was inclusive in many ways, certainly imperfect, and we've all fought to make it better, but thrived and created a middle class and created an actual American dream for so many people. But last month, CNN did a poll, and they asked about the status of the American dream for people all over the country. 59% of Americans said the American dream was no longer achievable for them. 63% said their children would not be better off than they were. That's how stark it is. The numbers speak to it, the attitude of our people speaks to it, and the drift from the vision of this nation could not be clearer. Now, let me tell you about what one other observer said. I think this may be one of the most striking things I've heard in a while. He was talking about the threat of inequality, appeared on one of the Sunday morning shows, and he said that this rising inequality was, quote, very destabilizing. He called it a very big issue and something that has to be dealt with. It's quite decisive. Who was that? The CEO of Goldman Sachs, Lloyd Blankfein. And he issued this warning to all of us. He said, quote, if you grow the pie but too few people enjoy the benefits of it and the fruit, then you'll have an unstable society. Now, we know this as mayors, again, because we live it every day, but it's not just about how far we've gone away from our moorings as a nation and our values. It's not just that we won't be able to compete if we aren't investing in our people, and particularly in our cities. It's also that we've created a dynamic where it's literally fostering instability because people feel no longer able to participate, no longer able to fully benefit from all that historically we've believed was something available to all of us. Certainly, a lot of us in this room grew up assuming that that was the reality. We saw it all around us. It was an article of faith. And then listen to those numbers suggesting how far we've gone. Everyone in this room is trying to address this crisis in different ways. In New York City, I'll just tell you very briefly, in the last 6 months, we've focused on things that we think will make a tangible impact and show people there is some hope again, and they will be included. We passed a paid sick leave law that reached 500,000 more people than the previous law. We've embarked on an affordable housing plan for 200,000 units of affordable housing in the next 10 years, because we know that's the biggest expense people face, and we can't address income inequality without going at the thing that holds people back so much, which is the cost of housing. We've gone at the core question of education, which will frame our future. We've gone at that question because for so many parents, if they have access to full-day, high-quality pre-K, that lightens a burden on parents so they can go and find work and get to work and stay at work, but also because it means their child will have the kind of educational foundation to succeed in an ever more competitive world. If we want to show people faith, full-day pre-K is a prerequisite because it's an educational option that actually speaks to the modern economy and the modern educational demands we face. And when we give that to our people, we show them we're actually trying to get them back in the game across the board. Makes a huge difference, just like after-school programs, which we're focused on, to lighten the burden of parents. Real pro-family policies are policies that make it easier for parents to parent while finding the income they need for their family. Things like full-day pre-K, things like after-school, address inequality foundationally, here and now, and build an opportunity for a more equal society in the future. In New York City, we've made clear next 2 years we are guaranteeing full-day pre-K to every child in our city. Come hell or high water, we're going to get it done because it's the right thing to do. Now, I'll be quick here. I know it's been a long morning, so I'll be quick. There's so many other fronts we have to face if we're really going to address inequality. I know one that's on the minds of a lot of us, especially in recent weeks, is broadband access. I know so many people here have been doing extraordinarily important work. If we're going to create fairness and economic opportunity, high-speed internet, affordable high-speed internet has to be available to all our citizens. And I want to thank Mayor Lee for his leadership on the net neutrality resolution, which I think speaks to the core realities that we face. I want to thank Mayor Murray of Seattle for his extraordinary efforts fighting for broadband access and raising real questions about what the corporate actions that have been taken, the proposed mergers and other actions, mean for actual equity and fairness for our people, let alone for our consumers. More than a quarter of Americans lack broadband access in their homes. The rates are much higher for low-income folks, for African Americans and Latinos as well. We're trying to do something locally, as so many of you are. We're very excited to turn all of our city payphones into a network of free Wi-Fi hotspots. We'll have over 7,000 as one effort, but there's so much more to do because we have to make sure that internet access is truly universal. Now, everyone in this room is fighting on these fronts. We're proud that we're doing some things in New York City we hope will work and we hope will be helpful as examples to others. We borrow all the time from each and every one of you. There's best practices, we all appreciate that notion, but I think we're in a time where we have to go even farther. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to chair our new task force because best practices helps us, but banding together in common cause helps us even more. Look what's happening around the country and look at how each one of our successes builds the other. Look at what Tulsa has done, extraordinary progress they've made on pre-K. I can tell you it's something we admired in New York City, and it helped us to be able to show it could be done. Denver, San Antonio, all have been making extraordinary impact on pre-K. Each progress, each step forward helps us build the next systematically for each other. What Mayor Lee has done in San Francisco with his initiative on affordable housing helped us as we constructed our affordable housing plan. The paid sick leave laws passed in San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Oregon, and Washington, D.C. framed for us what we needed to do on paid sick leave. The work that's been done to help immigrants, including undocumented immigrants, while we wait on our national leaders to resolve the fundamental question of immigration, we end up having to make our own choices of how to address tens of thousands, or in the case of New York City, hundreds of thousands of our neighbors who happen to be undocumented. And so places like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, New Haven passed municipal ID laws, which we're now borrowing as a notion in New York City and will do later this year. Look at the pattern, time and time again. Cities act in the absence of action from the federal level or the state level. Cities look at each other, learn from each other, aggressively move with each other. It's happening organically. We can help it happen even more deeply, even more effectively. The minimum wage and living wage issues are a perfect example. Seattle's action on the $15 minimum wage, Philadelphia's action on the $10.88 wage for city contracted work. These actions are raising the bar. We're taking inspiration from them in New York. I'll finish by saying that if we recognize inequality as the core challenge of our times, this is what we have received. We in this generation, we as the leaders of today, have received a crisis not that we asked for, not that we saw coming, but it's profound and it's deep. And it's what we have to take on head on. If we see inequality writ large as the crisis of our time, if we see income inequality as a particularly sharp element of that crisis, it's time to band together. It's time to make clear that we don't accept the trajectory we're on, and if our federal partners or our state partners aren't acting quickly enough, we will act. And in our actions locally, particularly if we knit them together more effectively, more urgently, we will create the beginning of an urban agenda again for this country. I want to emphasize, for decades, including from the time this organization was founded, there was an urban agenda in the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. For 50 years, the notion of an urban agenda in Washington was common, was respected, was necessary. And then from the 1980s on, that idea has been buffeted and dissipated in many ways. It's time to resurrect it forcefully. And the U.S. Conference of Mayors is the obvious leading edge of that effort, because we have the evidence on our side. We have to address the inequality crisis. It is mission critical for all of us locally. It is obviously mission critical for the future of our country. We have to address economic competition. And if there isn't investment in our cities, we will not be an economically competitive nation. Again, we are doing this for our own people, but we're doing something patriotic if we force an urban agenda to the core, again, to the core of the debate, to the fore of this national discourse. Because our nation needs that urban agenda. Doesn't matter where you live, we need that urban agenda again. Because that agenda implicitly would say, invest in infrastructure, invest in affordable housing, invest in research, invest in education. That's what would be the core of that agenda, and that is what our nation needs. And I don't accept, and I bet a lot of people in this room don't accept, that some people who go to Washington and represent our cities use their ideology as an excuse for not responding to our needs. Now, a great man once said, all politics is local. Tip O'Neill was right. Implicit in this is that we build an agenda that's substantively the right thing to do, but we remind the people who represent us in Washington, I don't care what party or what ideology they claim, that if they aren't serving our cities, then they've run afoul of the moment we live in, and they aren't helping us to build our nation up. We have to create that sense of urgency. I hope all of you will join our Cities of Opportunity Task Force and participate in every way you can. I thank Mayor Johnson again for his leadership. He was quick to see that we need this crystallizing effort at this time of crisis. If we band together, we can create something that we haven't seen in a number of decades. It's going to be a movement where cities around the country demand the kinds of things we've been missing. A great movie once had the line, "If you build it, they will come." Field of Dreams fans. Well, we have to build something and bring people along, some willingly, some less so, but we have to bring them along to that kind of agenda again. It will help us to create more equality. It will help us to create more opportunity. It will help us to show that mayors understand you can never wait. The job has to be done now. So let's bind together and show Washington how it's done, what it looks like to actually address these issues head on. Together we can reframe the national debate. We can reset the assumptions, and we can help our country aim higher. Thank you, and God bless you.
You're good. You're good. Fine, buddy. Awesome. Good job, man. All right. Thank you very much. This concludes our session. I want to say we have an important forum, Financing Urban Progress and Food Policy Task Force. We'll see you back here at 12:30, and Maria Shriver will be in the house. So enjoy your lunch.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we can get your help, please, we need to ask you to please exit the ballroom at this time. Please take your stuff with you as we reset for lunch. Thank you.